Silence and struggle are two of the most underestimated teachers in life. When most people think of silence, they imagine emptiness, inactivity, or absence. And when they think of struggle, they imagine difficulty, resistance, and pain. Yet when observed deeply, both silence and struggle carry within them a hidden force, a form of wisdom that words cannot capture and comfort cannot provide. They are not simply conditions to endure, but thresholds we must cross in order to meet the deeper dimensions of ourselves. The test of silence is often more difficult than the test of speaking. To remain quiet when everything within demands reaction, to withhold words when emotions are urging to be expressed, this is not weakness, but strength in disguise. Silence forces a person to confront the thoughts that usually get drowned in noise. It creates a mirror where one sees not the outer world, but the restless patterns of the inner mind. In silence, excuses have no place to hide. The mind begins to display its fears, its desires, its cravings, and its resistance. For many, this confrontation is unbearable, which is why they fill their lives with distractions. But the one who remains silent learns to stand face to face with their own turbulence. This is the beginning of discipline. Struggle in its own form is equally misunderstood. Struggle is not merely suffering. It is the resistance encountered when growth is demanded but not yet embraced. It arrives when life places weight on your shoulders, when obstacles stand between you and your goals, when inner battles take form as doubt, fatigue, or uncertainty. To many, struggle feels like a punishment. Yet if seen clearly, it is training. It is a sharpening stone for the spirit, a forge in which the raw ore of the individual is refined into strength. Struggle is the body's protest against challenge, but at the same time, it is the proof that growth is occurring. A muscle grows only when pushed beyond comfort, and so too does the human spirit expand only when pressed by difficulty. Silence and struggle together form a paradoxical path. In silence, there is no external battle, but the inner struggle is revealed. In struggle, there is often external resistance, but the silence within becomes the only refuge. When these two elements meet, they create a crucible for transformation. To sit in silence during a struggle is to face the storm without fleeing, to allow the pain to speak its language, and to listen without interruption. The silence teaches patience, while the struggle teaches resilience. Many seek shortcuts in life, ways to bypass discomfort and avoid hardship. But without silence, the mind is never trained. Without struggle, the spirit is never tested. The combination of the two creates depth in character, a foundation that does not waver when life inevitably brings storms. To endure silence without running, and to endure struggle without breaking. This is not only a test, but a passage into a stronger form of being. There is also a spiritual dimension to silence and struggle. Silence clears the noise that separates one from the essence of existence. It is in silence that insights arise unbidden, clarity takes form, and intuition sharpens. Struggle, on the other hand, strips away illusions. It removes the false belief that life should always be easy, that progress comes without sacrifice. Struggle reveals the truth that growth is earned, not gifted. When silence and struggle are understood together, the individual begins to see that neither is an enemy, but both are companions on the journey. A person who cannot remain silent is enslaved by their impulses. A person who cannot endure struggle is weakened by life's inevitable challenges. But one who has passed through the test of silence and struggle emerges unshaken. They understand that strength is not given freely, but cultivated through discipline and persistence. They see that peace is not merely the absence of conflict, but the ability to remain centered even when conflict surrounds them. In silence, one learns self-control. In struggle, one learns self-mastery. The two together produce a human being who no longer runs from themselves, who no longer collapses when difficulty arises, who no longer depends on external validation for inner balance. This person carries silence as a shield and struggle as a teacher. They do not fear difficulty, for they understand it is part of the path. They do not fear silence, for they recognize it as a source of inner strength. The test of silence and struggle is ongoing. It does not end with one challenge or one period of reflection. Life repeatedly calls us back to both. Each time we are asked, can you remain still when the mind screams for distraction? Can you remain strong when the body demands relief? Those who answer yes are the ones who gradually rise beyond their old limitations. They develop a clarity of mind that is not dependent on conditions and a resilience of spirit that cannot be shaken by storms. Silence is the still water where reflection takes place. Struggle is the fire that burns away weakness. Together, they carve a human being capable of depth, strength, and vision. To face them is to face oneself without illusions, to accept the raw weight of existence, and to discover the hidden power that has been waiting beneath the noise and beyond the comfort zones of life. In life, there are countless moments that slip by without applause, without an audience, without even a single person noticing. These are the quiet passages of time, the transitions that unfold without celebration or recognition. Yet, within these moments lies a profound truth about the human journey. Not every step forward will be acknowledged, not every effort will be seen, and not every sacrifice will be rewarded with praise. The essence of growth often happens in the shadows, in the spaces where recognition is absent but transformation is silently taking root. When we reflect on the idea of passing without recognition, it is not simply about being overlooked by others, it is about realizing that recognition itself is never the true purpose of our actions. Many people live their lives in pursuit of acknowledgement. They want to be seen, appreciated, and validated for what they do. But life, in its truest form, is indifferent to whether we are applauded or not. The sun rises without anyone clapping, the rivers flow without anyone praising, the trees grow without anyone cheering them on. Nature demonstrates that the power of existence does not depend on being noticed. In the same way, our journey is not diminished just because it passes without recognition. There is a certain weight that people carry when they expect recognition. They begin to measure their worth through the eyes of others. If they are acknowledged, they feel valuable. If they are ignored, they feel invisible. But this attachment to external validation creates suffering. It chains a person to the approval of the outside world, leaving them restless when it does not come. To pass without recognition is a lesson in humility and strength. It teaches that value does not increase with applause nor decrease with silence. The true worth of an action lies in the intention behind it, not in the response it receives. Think of the countless individuals in history who contributed greatly but were never celebrated during their lifetimes. Their names were not etched into monuments, and their deeds were not broadcast to the world. Yet their impact rippled quietly, shaping the lives of others in ways they may never have imagined. Some planted seeds whose flowers they would never see. Others endured hardship so that generations after them might walk easier paths. Their lives passed without recognition, yet the depth of their contributions cannot be denied. When one learns to move through life without the need for recognition, a new kind of freedom emerges. It is the freedom of being untethered from expectation. Actions are no longer performed with the hidden desire to be seen, but rather as pure expressions of authenticity. A person begins to live in alignment with their inner compass rather than the shifting judgments of society. In this space, every step becomes lighter, every effort more genuine, because there is no burden of seeking approval. Passing without recognition also reminds us of the impermanence of all things. Applause fades, praise is forgotten, and recognition, even when it comes, is temporary. What remains is not the acknowledgement, but the essence of the journey itself. The effort, the lessons, the resilience built along the way. These are the true treasures. To focus only on recognition is to chase shadows. To walk without needing recognition is to embrace substance. There is also a deeper spiritual element to this idea. The ego craves recognition because it thrives on being seen and validated. It wants to be known, admired, and remembered. But the essence of wisdom lies in transcending this craving. When a person learns to detach from the hunger for recognition, they begin to access a quieter, more profound strength. It is the strength of the inner self which does not need to be broadcast, does not need to be confirmed, and does not diminish when unseen. In daily life, the practice of passing without recognition can be cultivated in small ways. It could be performing an act of kindness without expecting thanks. It could be contributing to a task without waiting for acknowledgement. It could be offering patience, understanding, or forgiveness without needing anyone to notice. These are the invisible moments of greatness, the acts that shape character more than reputation. They are not recorded in history books, yet they etch themselves deeply into the soul. To pass without recognition also teaches resilience against disappointment. Life will not always acknowledge effort. Hard work will not always be rewarded publicly. Sacrifice will not always be seen. If one depends on recognition, then the absence of it becomes a wound. But if one has already accepted that recognition is not the purpose, then absence does not harm. Instead, each step forward is taken with peace because the journey is its own reward. There is an ancient strength in the ability to move unseen. Like the roots of a tree that grow deep in the earth, unseen by the world above, yet providing the foundation for life to flourish, so too does a life lived without constant recognition provide depth and resilience. The roots are never praised, but without them, the tree cannot stand. In the same way, the unseen efforts, the silent struggles, and the unnoticed perseverance are what give life its real strength. Passing without recognition is not about invisibility or neglect. It is about learning to exist beyond the need for external validation. It is about realizing that one's essence, one's actions, and one's path are inherently valuable. Even if unseen, it is about finding strength in silence, power in humility, and meaning in the very act of living authentically. Regardless of whether anyone notices or not, life often disguises its greatest lessons in the places we least expect. When we think of training, we imagine gyms, dojos, meditation halls, or environments purposely designed for growth. We imagine deliberate practice, structured routines, and visible progress. But the truth is that the most powerful training ground is often hidden, existing not in external spaces, but within the ordinary, the mundane, the overlooked moments of our everyday lives. It is within this hidden training ground that the mind, body, and spirit are refined. The hidden training ground reveals itself when no one is watching. It is not in the applause of achievement, but in the silence of persistence. It is not in the recognition we gain, but in the discipline we apply when there is no recognition at all. When you wake up and do not feel motivated, but you choose to continue, this is training. When you meet with discomfort, with frustration, with resistance, and you do not retreat, this is training. Life hides these opportunities in plain sight, and the one who recognizes them begins to understand that strength is not forged in comfort, but in the invisible arena of struggle. Most people believe they will grow when circumstances are favorable. They wait for the perfect environment, the right teacher, or the right time. Yet the hidden training ground never waits. It is always present. Every conflict becomes a test of patience. Every disappointment becomes a test of resilience. Every temptation becomes a test of focus. The hidden training ground does not appear only in sacred spaces. It appears in traffic, in difficult conversations, in failure, in waiting, in loss. When we shift our perspective to see these moments as training rather than punishment, the ordinary becomes extraordinary and the difficult becomes necessary. The reason this training ground remains hidden is because it does not announce itself. There are no signs that say, "No, you are being tested." The test is disguised as inconvenience, as rejection, as delay. To the untrained mind, these experiences feel like obstacles, interruptions to the path. To the trained mind, they are the path itself. The hidden training ground is not separate from life, it is life. Every moment, every interaction, every struggle is shaping you, sharpening you, conditioning you, if only you are willing to see it this way. Consider the nature of water. Water flows quietly, often unnoticed, carving valleys, shaping stones, transforming landscapes over time. Its power lies not in sudden bursts, but in steady persistence. In the same way, the hidden training ground works subtly, day by day, through small acts of endurance and awareness. You may not see progress in the moment, but every choice, every response, every act of discipline leaves its mark. Just as water sculpts stone, life sculpts the human spirit through invisible repetition. In this hidden training ground, the greatest opponent you face is not the world, but yourself. It is your own impatience, your own doubts, your own resistance to discomfort. When you are tired, the voice that says, "Stop," is your real adversary. When you are hurt, the voice that says, "Escape," is the one you must confront. The hidden training ground reveals these inner voices and forces you to train not only the body, but also the mind. Strength of muscle without strength of thought collapses in adversity. True training requires you to master both. There is a misconception that growth comes only through grand achievements or monumental shifts. But the hidden training ground shows that greatness is cultivated in the small, consistent choices no one sees. Choosing to breathe instead of reacting in anger, choosing to endure instead of quitting, choosing to remain centered instead of being swept away. These are the unseen victories that prepare you for greater challenges. And when the larger tests come, you are ready, Because you have already trained silently in the shadows of daily life. Discipline in the hidden training ground is not glamorous. It is repetition, monotony, and patience. The seed grows in darkness before it touches the light. Muscles grow not in the lifting but in the rest that follows. Wisdom grows not in speaking but in listening. In the same way, transformation happens not in public displays but in hidden perseverance. The challenge is to remain devoted when no one is there to encourage you, to remain steady when no one rewards you, to remain committed when progress feels invisible. The hidden training ground also teaches humility. It reminds us that we are not in control of all circumstances, but we are always in control of our response. We cannot dictate the behavior of others, but we can choose whether to be provoked. We cannot stop change from arriving, but we can choose whether to resist or adapt. This humility is itself a form of strength, for it allows us to bend without breaking, to endure without hardening, to remain open without being fragile. Every individual who has ever achieved mastery has walked through the hidden training ground. It is the forge of unseen effort, the practice beneath the performance, the foundation beneath the tower. What appears effortless on the outside is always the product of struggle on the inside. The martial artist's graceful strike, the monk's serene silence, the leader's unshakable calm. All of these are the results of hours, days, and years spent in invisible training. The hidden training ground is not something to be found, but something to be recognized. It is already here. It is in your current situation. No matter how ordinary or difficult it appears, every challenge you face is not separate from your path, but part of it. The hidden training ground is not tomorrow, it is today. It does not exist somewhere else, it exists where you are. The question is not whether you are in training, but whether you are aware that you are training. Truth is not something that arrives suddenly like lightning in the sky. It is not always an explosion that forces the eyes open. More often, truth unfolds quietly, gradually, layer by layer, as if a curtain is being drawn back in the mind. The revelation of truth does not depend on how loudly it announces itself, but on how deeply one has prepared to see it. When the mind is clouded with illusions, with desires, with attachments and fears, truth can stand directly in front of the eyes and still remain invisible. The journey to revelation is not about chasing it somewhere outside, but about cleansing the lenses through which one sees, until clarity makes the obvious finally visible. Every person carries within them concepts they cling to, ideas of who they are, what life must give them, and what the world is supposed to look like. These concepts act like shadows. They obscure reality and distort perception. The revelation of truth begins when these ideas are challenged, when the weight of unexamined beliefs begins to collapse under its own pressure. At first, the collapse feels like loss, as if everything familiar is being taken away. Yet in that moment of emptiness, truth begins to whisper, not as something foreign, but as something that was always present beneath the noise. The mind resists revelation because it fears uncertainty. It would rather hold tightly to lies that feel comfortable than to step into clarity that dismantles the structures it has built. But truth is patient. It waits. It does not force itself, for it has no urgency. The moment a person grows tired of illusions, the moment they become exhausted from carrying falsehoods, truth reveals itself like light filling a room when the curtains are pulled aside. The light was never absent, only the obstruction made it seem so. To encounter truth is not only to gain knowledge, but to experience a shift in being. It is not intellectual recognition, but a transformation that penetrates deeply into the heart. Truth alters the way one walks, breathes, speaks, and interacts with the world. Once revealed, it cannot be unseen. Once felt, it cannot be unfelt. It carries with it a clarity that redefines existence itself. The revelation of truth is not passive information, it is power that reshapes how one lives each moment. There is a silence in truth, and in this silence there is strength. Words can describe fragments, but truth itself cannot be confined by language. When revelation arrives, it is often wordless, a deep inner recognition that transcends explanation. It is the stillness when a person suddenly realizes that all the striving, all the seeking, all the running was unnecessary because what was sought was already here. It is the quiet knowing that cannot be debated because it is beyond argument, a knowing that stands immovable even when the mind attempts to resist. The revelation of truth does not always bring comfort. In fact, it often begins with discomfort, with the shattering of illusions that were once carefully held together. It dismantles false security, exposing the fragility of masks and the instability of false foundations. Yet within this discomfort lies liberation. When what is false is stripped away, space opens for authenticity, and authenticity carries a strength that no lie can sustain. The pain of revelation is the pain of growth, and through it one steps closer to freedom. Truth also carries with it responsibility. To see clearly means one can no longer pretend to be blind. To know what is real means one can no longer excuse actions that were born from ignorance. This is why many resist truth. They fear the responsibility it demands. But responsibility is not a burden. It is the path to empowerment. It is the recognition that once one has seen, one has the capacity to act in alignment with that vision. And to act in truth is to move with the flow of life itself, without resistance, without pretension. The revelation of truth is rarely about extraordinary moments. It reveals itself in the ordinary, in the overlooked, in the small details that were always present but unnoticed. A single breath can reveal truth. The falling of a leaf can reveal truth. The gaze of another human being can reveal truth. It is not that the external world suddenly changed, but that the internal perception was cleared enough to see reality as it is. And in that seeing, the mundane becomes sacred. When truth reveals itself, it dissolves the boundaries between what is inner and outer. The separation between self and world begins to blur. The revelation shows that what one thought was external is deeply connected to what is internal. That the universe is not something distant, but something continuously unfolding within the same consciousness that seeks it. In this recognition, the walls of isolation begin to fall, and with their collapse comes a profound sense of connection. The revelation of truth is not the end of a journey, but the beginning of a deeper one. For each layer revealed, another lies beyond. Each illusion dissolved exposes subtler forms of deception. Truth is infinite in depth, and its revelation is continuous, never stagnant. The mind may grasp a glimpse and believe it has reached the final destination, but truth is like a horizon that expands as one approaches. The revelation is not a single event, but an ongoing unfolding that deepens as awareness matures. Responsibility is a word that carries weight, and often it feels heavier than we would like to admit. Yet the act of stepping into responsibility is not about being burdened, but about reclaiming the authority we have over our own lives. It is the point where we shift from blaming, from waiting, from hoping circumstances will change, into recognizing that we are the ones who must initiate the change. Responsibility is not a punishment, it is a form of power. It is the bridge between who we are and who we have the potential to become. Without stepping into responsibility, life remains a series of reactions to what happens, rather than the deliberate creation of what could be. Most people try to avoid responsibility because it appears to limit freedom. They think, if I am responsible, I am bound. I must take care of things I would rather escape from. But responsibility is not about chains, it is about choice. When you take responsibility, you acknowledge that you are no longer a victim of outer circumstances. You are the author, the one who writes, who chooses, who decides. To avoid responsibility is to hand over your power to external forces. To step into it is to claim your rightful role as the one shaping your path. Consider how often in life we find ourselves saying, "It is because of them," or "It is because of this situation," or "It is not in my hands." Each of these statements, though they may contain truth, also conceal a deeper truth, the refusal to see what is in our hands. Responsibility does not mean controlling the entire universe. It does not mean we can dictate every outcome. It means we accept the part that belongs to us. The way we think, the way we act, the way we respond, the way we carry ourselves in moments of difficulty. This part may look small compared to the vastness of external events, but it is in fact the most decisive element. When we take responsibility, we stop wasting energy on blame. Blame is a comfortable refuge for the mind because it absolves us from effort. To blame is to say, "I am powerless." To be responsible is to say, "I still have a choice." Even in the smallest action, how we breathe, how we hold our body, how we treat others, there is responsibility. The individual who embraces this begins to realize that their life is not random, but shaped, influenced, guided by their own hands. Responsibility also requires maturity. Maturity is not simply aging, but the ability to look at reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. A child blames others. A child insists that the world must bend to their demands. An adult recognizes that the world is vast, unpredictable, and at times indifferent. Yet in the midst of this unpredictability, the adult also recognizes their own agency. The power is not in controlling everything, but in controlling themselves. This is where strength lies and where true freedom begins. Stepping into responsibility often feels uncomfortable at first. It feels like a demand, a pressure, a weight. But as you practice it, it reveals itself to be liberating. When you say, I am responsible, you also say, I am capable. You no longer depend on others to rescue you, to validate you, to solve what lies ahead. You begin to trust your own inner capacity. This trust deepens with every step you take. Many people live in a cycle of postponement. They wait for the right moment, the right conditions, the right alignment of circumstances before they take responsibility. But responsibility does not wait. It must be stepped into now. The more we delay, the more we feel that life is slipping from our hands because we are still holding on to the illusion that someone else will carry what belongs to us. Life will not become lighter by postponing. It becomes lighter by carrying what is ours to carry, and in doing so, discovering that we are stronger than we believed. Responsibility also sharpens clarity. When you take ownership of your actions, you begin to see the direct link between cause and effect. You realize that your habits shape your future, your thoughts shape your perception, your choices shape your reality. This clarity can be uncomfortable because it means that excuses no longer protect you. But it is also empowering because it places the tools of change directly in your hands. There is also a quiet dignity that emerges from responsibility. It is not boastful, not loud, but steady. The person who is responsible does not need to prove themselves through words. Their actions, their presence, their reliability speak for them. Others may waver, others may run, others may complain, but the responsible one stands firm. This stability inspires trust, not only from others, but from within oneself. You begin to trust yourself to face life as it comes, because you know you will not abandon your own duty. Stepping into responsibility is ultimately an act of alignment. It aligns thought with action, intention with behavior, potential with reality. It turns the abstract idea of who you could be into the living reality of who you are becoming. It is the path of discipline, but also the path of freedom, because it frees you from dependency, from helplessness, from denial. Responsibility does not weigh you down, it strengthens your back, steadies your steps, and reveals the depth of your own capacity. Life presents us with moments where the old path no longer serves us. It may feel comfortable, familiar, and predictable, but it carries the weight of repetition. The human being often becomes a creature of habit, circling the same routines, thoughts, and behaviors because they feel safe. Yet true growth never emerges in safety alone. The new path forward begins when one recognizes that what is familiar is not necessarily what is nourishing. Comfort can sometimes be the disguise of stagnation. The courage to step onto a new path requires the recognition that movement, even uncertain movement, holds more life than standing still. A new path forward does not announce itself with clarity at first. It is often hidden behind doubts, fears, and the voices of old conditioning. The mind may whisper that change is too difficult, too dangerous, too unpredictable. It resists because the unknown cannot be controlled. Yet the unknown is also the place where transformation takes root. Every breakthrough, every expansion of consciousness, every moment of true discovery has always been born from entering the territory that once felt foreign. The new path forward is not a straight road, but an unfolding, step by step, revealing itself only as one walks upon it. When one decides to move forward, the first challenge is not external, but internal. The greatest barriers are not the obstacles outside, but the inner chains of fear, attachment, and doubt. The old path is woven from identity stories and beliefs that once offered structure but now act as walls. The more tightly one holds onto the old, the heavier the journey becomes. The new path forward requires shedding, not of responsibilities but of illusions. It asks for a loosening of grip on what no longer serves the spirit. It is less about adding more and more about releasing what is unnecessary. There is a profound difference between walking forward with a burden and walking forward with clarity. Many try to move toward a new life while carrying the weight of the past on their shoulders. They bring old anger, regret, and fear into each new step, and then wonder why the scenery looks the same. To step onto a true new path, one must learn to leave behind what belongs to yesterday. This is not about denial or suppression, but about acceptance and release. The past is a teacher, but not a companion for the future. Silence becomes a guide here. In silence, one can listen to what is essential and distinguish it from what is noise. The new path forward emerges not from endless calculation, but from attunement. When the mind is restless, it searches in all directions, looking for guarantees. But when the mind is still, clarity rises naturally. A river does not plan its course, it flows according to the landscape, and yet it always finds its way to the sea. In the same way, one who trusts silence can move forward without knowing the entire road, because step by step the way becomes clear. The new path forward also requires patience. In a world that values speed, one is often tempted to demand immediate transformation. But deep changes are like seeds. They do not sprout on the day they are planted. The soil must be tended, the conditions must be right, and time must be given. A new path forward unfolds gradually, often invisibly, until one day it becomes visible that life has changed. Impatience is the habit of the old self, always rushing, always forcing. Patience is the virtue of the new self, trusting that alignment brings results without needing to control the timing. Another element of the new path is presence. Many step forward physically while remaining mentally behind, lost in memories, regrets, or anxieties about the future. To walk a new path forward is to bring full attention to each step. Presence turns walking into progress because it is only in presence that one can learn from what unfolds. Every stone, every turn, every unexpected moment becomes part of the teaching. Presence transforms uncertainty from something to fear into something to explore. The new path forward also changes one's relationship with struggle. Struggle is not necessarily a sign of misdirection, it is often the friction of growth. Just as muscles strengthen through resistance, the spirit deepens through challenges. But the struggle on the new path differs from the struggle on the old. On the old path, struggle drains because it is rooted in resistance to life. On the new path, struggle strengthens because it is aligned with evolution. One learns to distinguish between the suffering of stagnation and the growing pains of transformation. There is also humility in walking forward. The old path often gives a false sense of control, as though one already knows enough, has already mastered enough. But stepping into something new requires the humility of a beginner. It demands openness, a willingness to be taught, to listen, to learn. The ego resists this, clinging to the identity of expertise. But the heart understands that real progress always begins in the space of openness. Humility keeps the path alive, while arrogance shuts it down. The new path forward is not an escape from life, but a deeper entry into it. It is not about avoiding difficulties, but about approaching them with a transformed perspective. It is not about reaching a fixed destination, but about continuously unfolding, expanding, and evolving. Each step redefines who one is becoming, and with each release of the old, space is created for something new to emerge. The new path forward is walked not once, but again and again. Each time life asks for renewal, each time the spirit calls for expansion, each time one hears the quiet voice within that whispers there is more to discover,